Good afternoon, everyone. I call to order the regular meeting of the City Planning Commission for Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024. And at this time, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Commissioner Baxley.
Here.
Chowdhury is absent. Campbell.
Here.
Conley.
Here.
Emmerich is absent. Jones.
Here.
Meyer.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
We have 8 members present.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that a quorum is present. With that, we'll proceed to the agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system. We will begin with acceptance of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 8th, 2024. May I have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That carries. We will now move to the adoption of the agenda. So there are copies of it over on the table over there if anyone needs one. It's also available online at lims.minneapolismn.gov. And I'm going to read through all the different agenda numbers and the addresses that they affect and state whether the item is slated for consent, continuance, return, withdrawal, or discussion. Consent items are those that will be passed without any discussion by the board. We will be adhering to the staff recommendation listed on the agenda item as the recommended motion section. Importantly, if there are any applicable conditions, they will be listed in that same section. If you agree with the recommendation, including any applicable conditions, you don't need to do anything. The commission will pass it as recommended. If you have any questions following the decision, you can check in with the staff member assigned to that item. If you disagree with the recommendation, indicate that as we go through the items, and we can put them on the discussion agenda. With that, we have the following items on the agenda for this evening. For the first one, 2114 23rd Avenue North. This is a public land sale. This is on our consent agenda and does not have any public hearing. For item number 515 10th Avenue Southeast, this has been recommended for our consent agenda. Is anyone here to speak against this item number 515 10th Avenue Southeast? All right, we'll put that on consent. For item number 6, 409 South 9th Street, this has been recommended for consent. Is there anyone here to speak against item number 6? All right, we'll put that on consent as well. And item number 7, the zoning code text amendment regarding fees for land use application fees and sign permit fees. Is there anyone here to speak against this item? All right, we'll put that on consent as well. We've also got a discussion item for number 8. We will be discussing that. All right, so then our agenda would be to adopt items 4, 5, 6, and 7 on consent and to discuss number 8. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? The agenda is adopted. All right, so we'll first move to item number 4, 2114 23rd Avenue North, which is a public land sale. And is Ratana here to present that? Okay, I guess was there any discussion about it? Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and approve item 4 separately since there's no, all right, so that's no public hearing for that one. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, item 4 is adopted. And now we'll move to the rest of our consent agenda items 5, 6, and 7. Is there any comment, any discussion about the consent agenda? I do just want to make one note about item number 7, reiterating something that we discussed in the committee of the whole. So these are adjustments to our fees, and they're going to be a pretty sharp increase because they haven't increased for inflation for several years. In the committee of the whole, we brought up the question, like, why is it that we don't just have a gradual inflation adjustment each year? And apparently that's because of statute. I'd just like to draw some public attention to that, and I think that that's something that we should try to fix, something that could be recommended to be added to the city's legislative agenda, because I do think it would be better to have gradual increases that match inflation rather than a big sharp increase all at once. So I just wanted to add that comment. Any other comments on our consent agenda before we go forward? All right. All in favor of adopting our consent agenda?
Chair Meyer, I just want to make sure, maybe I missed it. Did we open the public hearing for those?
Oh, excuse me, no. we
Okay.
didn't. Sorry.
Thank you.
I will now open the public hearing for the consent agenda. Does anyone have would anyone like to come and speak about it? Now is your chance to say whatever you'd like about it. All right. Seeing none, I will close the public agenda, or public hearing. All right. Seeing no further comment,
Do we need a motion?
we do. All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda, or approve the consent agenda?
Yes, I'll make a motion to adopt items 5, 6, and 7 on consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That carries. All right, now we'll move on to item number 8. This is a proposed project at 2027 East Franklin Avenue. There will not be a public hearing for this one. This will be discussion only.
This is a committee of the whole item. I know that you canceled your committee of the whole meeting, so thank you for accommodating this item this evening, as I will be out of town. So this is the Indian Health Board. I'm going to just sit if that's okay. I've never presented it appears, but I'm gonna, and I'm cold, so I'm wearing my jacket, so I apologize. This is the Indian Health Board of Minneapolis. They are proposing to construct a new wellness clinic on the site at 2027 East Franklin Avenue. The site is zoned CM3, or Community Mixed Use District, and it's located in the Transit 20 Built Form Overlay District, which has a minimum FAR requirement of 2.0 and a minimum height requirement of 6 stories or 84 feet. The site, as you can see, is this vacant site located along 21st Avenue in East Franklin. The Indian Health Board also owns the site located here up along Cedar. And then there's a parking lot here on the corner, and then they have another clinic in this location. So they have somewhat of a campus-like environment at in this 2-block stretch of Franklin Avenue. They are proposing a 3-story wellness clinic. This will be medical and dental specifically. And the one question that we have for you tonight, or that we would like to discuss with you, that CPAD would like to discuss with you, is the height of the building, and that they will be needing a variance to reduce the minimum height from 6 stories down to 3. They did originally come in with a building that did not meet the minimum FAR, and I can say that through our conversations over the last couple of months, they have increased the size of the building by just under 4,000 square feet to get to that minimum FAR of 2.0. But that amount of bulk to get to the minimum FAR did not get to an additional 3 stories in the building height. And so before they apply and come to the full Planning Commission for a public hearing, we wanted to come before you this evening as part of a committee of the whole discussion item. And I can conclude there. And the applicants are here, and I'm going to just get to the renderings. This interface is different, and so I'm going to just leave it here for you all tonight. But I will conclude with that. It was a very brief memo. We just have the one question to discuss. And so I will stand for questions, or sit, I guess, as I am right now. And then the applicants can also come up and present as well.
All right. Questions or comments for staff? Commissioner Thompson?
Yeah, thank you. For just 2, they're relatively simple because I'm a newbie. What does FAR stand for?
The floor area ratio, so it's
Okay.
the amount of bulk of the building to the size of the site. So if you had a 10,000 square foot site, for example, an FAR of 1 would be a 1-story, 10,000 square foot building, or a 2-story, 5,000 per floor
Yep.
plate.
Got it.
So to meet that minimum, yep.
That's my second question. Why a minimum? Because I'm guessing this is part of the comp plan that I don't know yet. What's the logic behind that, just so I understand what the ask is?
We are within that half mile of the transit station at Franklin.
Okay.
And then also multiple high-density transit bus routes. But this area has been designated as a Transit 20 to increase the density around the transit station.
Okay, so minimum 6, maximum would be what?
20 with the ability to go to 30
Ooh,
with
okay.
premiums.
Okay. That's really all I needed to know. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. I have a question to follow up on Commissioner Thompson's question about the FAR. I actually was looking this over before and I didn't notice the minimum FAR requirement. Would you say that a 6-story building is commonly around 2.0 FAR? That feels a little bit low. And would you say, like, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this question. It seems like most 6-story buildings would be higher than a 2.0 FAR. Is that fair or is that misguided? And I guess maybe as a follow-up, here's my question. Why was the 2.0 FAR threshold set in comparison to the 6.0 height threshold?
I can try to answer that too. Staff did do analysis on previously approved projects when we were adopting the built form regulations to actually analyze what the floor area ratios typically looked like for 6-story buildings, 4-story buildings. So it was definitely an informed analysis that got us to where we are.
Thanks.
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the presentation, and especially sort of the preemptive presentation. I'm really familiar with this area, and I think a 3-story building would be appropriate. I'm not opposed to a 6-story, but I just think the location and sort of the uses around it would be really consistent with a 3-story building. So, and I appreciate the density and wanting to encourage density around transit corridors, but this is not a residential density, but commercial for, especially if it's consistent with the campus that the organization has sort of already established in that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you review, we've had a few other projects that requested a variance, or at least one that I recall that we rejected. Can you review the history of projects like that? So there was the one on University Avenue.
That is the one that I was thinking of. It was a 10-story minimum. They proposed a 7-story building, 7, I believe it was. Yep, 5/2. And that was denied through both Planning Commission and the City Council. And I don't believe they have come back with a different development for that site yet.
Okay. And there were no height minimums before the 2040 plan, is that correct? So this is a new thing?
That is correct. Under the old zoning code, this site had a maximum height of 4 stories. And with the adoption of 2040, it went to a minimum height of 6.
Okay. Commissioner Olson?
What was maybe I should know this. Why did we choose to talk about a variance versus a rezoning?
I think part of the conversation there was this area, given its proximity to transit, was a relatively clear line to the built form overlay district that was applied here. So it would be a comprehensive plan amendment and then a rezoning if they wanted to change it. That's a pretty lengthy, robust process. A lot of times the variance is a faster route. And if we don't think we can support the comp plan amendment, I believe that was a discussion here that, I don't know that we can support either application, but this was the path forward.
When the applicants came in, they do or still do want, they when our pre-application meeting happened, they wanted to start construction in July, and so a comp plan process would not fit within that time frame. So the alternative is to request the variance from the Planning Commission and see what happens through that and the council process.
Commissioner Campbell?
Hillary, you're going to have to forgive me for this question because I not only can't remember some of the words I need to ask the question, I should probably know the answer to this. In past variance requests, we've had to come up with, I think, conditions, or I can't remember what's the word I'm looking
Findings.
for? No, something else, though.
Unique circumstances.
It's some sort of unique circumstance. Does that apply here?
Yes, we will need to find a unique circumstance as to why the building should be 3 versus 6.
So in your opinion, having worked with the folks looking to build here, have you identified any unique conditions of the site that would give us?
I think what I should do is I should ask the applicants to come up because they did send me a memo today that they did go through the findings, and I apologize, I just got it. I was in meetings this afternoon, so I didn't have a chance to forward it. But they could give it to you. They brought copies, so you can have it either for today or for the future. But I mean, the site is somewhat uniquely shaped, but the nexus between a uniquely shaped site and the height of a building to me is,
Okay.
I can't find it. So if the Planning Commission, I don't know if the Planning Commission has had this discussion before, and I remember the conversation about the one on University. I don't recall, though, like, if the Planning Commission thought of, unique circumstances for height variance requests. Maybe not that site or, just in general, but not site-specific. But in this case, I'm having a hard time finding that nexus, so. But the applicants do have their findings written out, so if you guys
Let's hear from the
wanted to
applicants.
come up, I will let them speak, and I can hand out the applications. Yep, I will. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and I'll get these to you. Yes, these the same.
Actually, no, this is my notes, I'm sorry. That's just a land acknowledgement statement.
If you can each tell us your names, and then can give us your full presentation if you'd like.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing us today. My name is Dr. Patrick Rock. I'm a family physician, also the CEO of the Indian Health Board. I'm a Leech Lake Band enrollee, and I've been with the Indian Health Board going on my 27th year of serving South Minneapolis and the indigenous people that live there. The Indian Health Board, just a very brief history. Indian Health Board has been a partner with the city of Minneapolis for a long time, over 50 years. And we've provided healthcare services, dental services, and counseling and behavioral health services to the Phillips and Seward and really a large population that we draw from actually several communities surrounding us in Twin Cities. We do have a group of folks that come and see us from St. Paul, so there's really no indigenous clinics in St. Paul, so we actually provide a lot of services that are far-reaching, not just to the local area. One of the reasons we currently exist at 1315 East 24th Street. We've recognized pretty early a couple of issues with our current location, which we own outright. We've operated out of that location for quite some time. And one was just a lack of public transportation around our facility. We've been slowly losing public transportation. We used to have a bus line in front of our building, right on East 24th Street, where the old Deaconess Hospital used to be, right across the street from that. So that was, we've lived with that for several years. We increased our transportation services. And then we also noticed that we were more recessed more in our residential areas where we exist right now. And so we rapidly found out that we needed to improve our access to services within our population and also stay very close to the Little Earth residence location. So we didn't want to lose our identity. We wanted to make sure we were close. And another draw that was of course, for East Franklin Avenue was termed as the American Indigenous Corridor at one point in time. So we want to be on the corridor, right? So we felt that this was an important connection for us. Actually, one of the more basic principles of philosophies that we take in is that wellness is, of course, wellness is connected to tradition, but tradition is connected to land. And we've always been a very land-based people. So land is a big deal for us. And having sovereignty or really self-determined concepts as far as land is very important to indigenous people. And so we approach wellness in that perspective. We've, as I mentioned earlier, we've been in existence well over 50 years. And actually, the urban Indian health movement started here in Minneapolis, which is a fantastic thing, right? Currently, there's 41 urban Indian health organizations across the United States. We get funding through the Indian Health Service and get something called Title V of the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act. That's, of course, abutted to and adjoined to the Affordable Care Act. So it's prominent, it's important for our people to continue providing really important health care services. The value that we bring, I think just going back on recent history and remembrance for a lot of people, for everybody, was COVID-19. And we really had an important impact on COVID-19 within our community. We actually facilitated a lot of vaccine, testing, and treatment within our community. So we've become an essential health care provider within our community. And so we've envisioned this campus as really a next genesis for us to maintain and improve access and to expand our services within our community. So things like traditional healing, which is a large concept of what we're bringing forward today. I also have a couple of folks from our architects who have been actually part of our process for, I said, well over 6 or 7 years now. So this is not something that just kind of sprung up yesterday. It's been kind of something in our process of thinking. We actually purchased the property that we're talking about in 2015 when the height requirement was at less than 4 stories. And so as our process continued, we, of course, now, that's why we're here today. We come to find out there's a new ordinance that we have to accomplish. And I just want to, make sure that, that the indigenous people still have access to the corridor, that we're not spacing them out, or especially with a healthcare facility, I think will actually complement a lot of the density issues that you guys have brought up as far as the actual building is concerned. So, but I'm going to turn things over to our architects just to kind of give you talk our way through the variances specifically, and turn things over to Mike.
All right. Good afternoon, Bonjour. My name is Mike Lavager. I'm a principal at DSUW Architects. I'm an enrolled member of Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa in North Dakota, and I've been working with Dr. Rock since 2015. I'm going to turn it over to my business partner, and he's going to introduce himself and talk a little bit about the ordinances and the tests that we think we've kind of met some of those tests to this. And I know he's got to run because he's got to catch a flight here, so I'm going to turn it over to him right away, and I'll follow up after that. So.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Ryan Turner. I'm a healthcare architect with DSGW, and as Mike mentioned, one of his business partners. So I'm going to speak, I'll say, a little more to the specifics of the clinic itself. And I think it was maybe commented on a little bit earlier about how we've worked really well with Hillary, going back and forth, reacting to her comments, and I'll say that IHB has been very courageous and taking some big steps forward to meet all of the new set of rules that we, of course, started working under last July. The biggest of which was touched on already, the FAR requirement. They're, I'll say, taking a courageous step to build excess square footage addition to what they had originally programmed, so they can meet that requirement and try to meet you where you are. The one variance request, again, is the height that we're asking direction on today. And what I'll say, just programmatically, operationally, to have this same square footage of a clinic that meets the density you're looking for, but to turn around and make that floor plate stretch through 6 stories would make it operationally inefficient, and frankly, it wouldn't function the way it's intended if you were to shrink those floor plates and have twice as many of them. So that's one thing specifically I want to make sure we touched on, which is why we're coming here to ask that today. So as I hope you had a chance to just take briefly a look at the packet that was handed out. Not expecting that you're going to have it read word for word here, but 2 things that I would like to point out. If you head to page 6 and 7, you'll see the images. There's an aerial that I'll just touch on first, and it lends itself to the point that was made earlier that the description of this current neighborhood, I believe it will meet the essential character of this locality. And the use here, the buildings that you see on this map are kind of color-coded, as you can see. We've got the blue, which are neighboring properties that are 3 stories or less. We've got the orange, which is 4 to 5 stories, and you can see there are only a handful of buildings that are currently in this area that are 6 stories. But where our site is, kind of right dead center, at the very end of the American Indian Cultural Corridor, we're really looking forward to this being an anchor to that corridor. And you'll see it is going to be a 3-story building amongst other buildings that are 3 stories or less, just for reference. The other image that you see on page 7, is just the map showing the current areas. We, of course, are kind of center right on the eastern edge of the zoning district that we're in currently, that has a minimum of 6 stories. And you can see we've got neighboring areas that are a minimum of 2 stories and a maximum of 2.5 to 3. So again, it just lends itself to, I hope, this building being something that fits in with, the adjacent properties in the neighborhood, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. So the other piece that I just wanted to touch on quickly, the 3 areas that we wanted to address, you'll see that Mr. Campbell had alluded to, what are the requirements, or how do we go about having a basis to request a variance? And we've touched on all 3 of those here. The challenges that exist in complying with the ordinance because of unique circumstances, and then number 2, the authorized applicant proposes the property in a reasonable manner that will be keeping with the spirit and intent of the ordinance and the comprehensive plan, and we kind of walk through a number of points related to that. And then finally, the one that I touched on with the images, which is will not alter the essential character here. So with that said, like I said, I apologize that I am short on time personally, but I'll put you back in Mike and Dr. Rock's faithful hands, and I just want to thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thanks, Ryan. Catch your plane. Yeah, so I think we've tried to game this out and answer the questions of kind of testing that we meet those challenges. And so one of the other things too that, for a future reference, Mr. Meyer, that you might want to bring up to the commission is if you go to the last page and you go to 4BI, if you look at that American Indian corridor, and that corridor is populated by a lot of American Indian nonprofits like the Indian Health Board, I would revisit that, because if you go visit with all those nonprofits and tribes and everything, if you go talk to them and say, we understand the American Indian Corridor is, kind of your guys' home, but any buildings in the future all have to be 6 stories. None of those Indian organizations are going to build anything. They're just going to walk away from that neighborhood. So you might want to visit that. I mean, that's just my opinion of knowing the nonprofits down in that community. And for this to be a 6-story, and Ryan talked about it, and when you're talking about healthcare design, you talk about lean operating procedures, and this is something Dr. Rock has talked to us, right? So how far is it for the pharmacist to walk to a home care area where they can talk to the patient, right? So if it's a 3-story facility, that lean operating procedures is much more efficient than if I have to get in an elevator and ride up 5 stories to meet somewhere else, right? So a hospital lends itself to multi-story design, but clinics should not. And I guess you have all of the business models and everything, but this is a clinic. It's not a hospital. It's not anything else, not level 3 care, any of that stuff. This is just a clinic. It needs to have quick access to patients and for doctors to interact together in a lean operating and efficient pattern. And requiring 6 stories really is not good. So that's one of the reasons that we feel that a 3-story is really, really relevant here. But again, that American Indian Corridor, this is going to be the new eastern anchor of that American Indian Corridor. And if you bear with me, I'll tell you a little bit about the design. In 1918, the Spanish flu pandemic was here. And a Native American woman had a vision. And she was told that if she created a jingle dress and danced with it, it was a healing dress. And so they did that in 1918. And almost 100 years later, we had another pandemic. And Dr. Rock and I were envisioning this clinic design, and if you can see the design, that corner looks like a jingle on a jingle dress. So this building, again, with a holistic approach, is going to be the eastern anchor of the American Indian Corridor, but it's going to be culturally represented by the design of a jingle dress. And so it's a healing building, it's a healing campus, and then requiring us to make a 6-story jingle, it's going to basically throw the design element out the window, and we might as well just put a square tube box up because that's the only thing he's going to be able to afford. So we'll lose the cultural element in this design and have to start over. So again, that's just me being a little bit passionate on my soapbox, but again, we've really thought this out, and we really appreciate working with Hillary and her ability to kind of walk us through this. So I don't know, I can answer any more questions, or Dr. Rock, if you have any more things to add.
Thank you for your presentation. Have you considered doing a mixed-use project with housing on top, partnering with someone else to do
Dr.
that?
Rock and I talked about this a couple of days ago on Monday, and so they're in the business of clinics, and to interject a mixed use into here makes it really inefficient. I mean, Dr. Rock could probably tell you stories of working in Hennepin County, the hospital here and all that stuff, and the ability to try to the HIPAA regulations and interjecting people who are not there for medical purposes into the formula isn't conducive to a really healing environment. All of a sudden, we have people who are residential in there or for commercial properties or any of those things. This should be for doctors and patients only. So a mixed use doesn't lend itself on a clinic level, especially when we're doing things that aren't just typically medical services. They're going to be having smudges here. I mean, do we want people who are non-native, non-residents walking through a smudging ceremony because they don't understand? Or do we want somebody who's going to Jimmy John's, walking into a ceremony, because they don't understand? This is a medical service area. And it doesn't just service Native Americans. It services anybody. But it's focused on Native Americans, Indigenous peoples, and holistic approaches. So mixed use really doesn't match. It's not a cultural match, if you want to put it that way. Yeah.
Just a few words.
Sure.
So I unfortunately have a lot of experience with this. As I mentioned earlier, I was during my residency, I did my residency at Hennepin County Medical Center a long time ago. But it was when I'm a family dog by training, so we did our training where the old Kmart used to be across the street on West Lake Street, right? And so our clinic was on the first floor of an apartment complex. And so we've constantly ran into issues of security within that parking lot. We constantly ran into issues of things like where people didn't want to come to see us because A lot of people live in that particular area, and so we're trying to be responsive to what our patients have told us. What our patients have told us is their privacy is paramount, is important. And that was the whole concept even behind this whole campus concept. We still have one place for like a single waiting area for multiple services. And so people didn't want to come in and wait for their mental health appointments and get recognized within it, because our community is fairly small, right? We know pretty much everybody that's in our local area. So people didn't want to look like they're getting their mental health services or their substance use disorder services. And so we spread things out. We individualized specific waiting areas so we have a separate waiting area in our building for behavioral health, take for example. So that's very specific. Actually, the concept actually helped us when COVID struck. We didn't want everybody in a single waiting area, so we, of course, spread things out. So it accomplished this concept accomplished several things moving forward. So I just wanted to just share that with you.
All right. Other questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Campbell.
So a couple of things. I think first, you don't need to hear a lecture from me on the cultural value of having, your presence in that neighborhood. I think that speaks for itself. I also work in healthcare and know that nobody goes into healthcare for the money because there's not much. And so this is clearly driven by your professional experience and your passion. And so thank you for bringing that to us today. I want to go back to two things. First of all, the comment that Commissioner Meyer made. The system I work for does incorporate a whole variety of different mixed uses. So whether it's commercial or housing or whatever the case may be, I do think that it's worth an evaluation. I know that it probably doesn't fit in with the mission and the work that you're prioritizing today, but I do think it would be a value, when this does come back in front of the commission for a full official review, for you to have exhausted that option in the interest of feedback on today's presentation. I think the second thing is, as I look through, we're in a challenging position here on this panel because we don't generally make political decisions. We make decisions based on what's outlined in ordinance or in statute. Whatever the law says is what we have to sort of interpret on behalf of the people who come to the committee. And variance requests we need to come up with findings that support one of each of the three different pieces that go along with that. As I look through the documentation that you've sent for us today, I think you've satisfactorily met condition 2 and 3. I think you should take a closer look at number 1. And I think what I read here is how the current zoning regulations don't fit in with your plan, but I think what the question is asking is how does this site, the property, the soil and the land, make it more challenging for you to fit into what the zoning code says? And I think it would be of value for you to look into the surrounding area that you're next to. We have, we provide variances for people who have difficult soil conditions, or if there are things, underneath the soil that make building challenging. Like there's a whole variety of different ways that we can get here. But I think what we have, at least in my opinion, what we have in front of us today does not meet that criteria. So I would take a closer look at number 1 here of your variance request before our next meeting.
Commissioner Baxley.
And thanks for the presentation. Yeah, just to echo a couple of things that Commissioner Campbell said, I think it was really important that you met that minimum FAR. I think because when we talk about density, it's about land use and the built form height. So I think setting that, I think that's really good, and I think that bolsters your argument. While we're not meeting height, we're meeting density in a different way. So I think focusing on that is good. I think also, you guys talk about a campus here. It would be helpful to see, if you have a master plan for the campus, how we're in an area that's driving 6 stories, how maybe in the future, while this one doesn't meet that, other ideas that we're thinking about of the campus potentially could. I think that really helps your argument, and the fact that your property is a border property too. When we talk about height and graduation of height from one zoning to the other. You could probably make an interesting argument around what those sort of border properties and the unique aspects of those to different zoning areas relative to height could be. So I think the other one, the fact that you purchased this property prior, you started planning for this under a certain condition, the city has changed that. I think talking about that too, that is a unique circumstance. One that you had bought this planning on a certain thing and now have to change that. Again, I think if you fold that into we recognize that into a master plan for this area, you begin to say, I can understand now. I've met the FAR. I've got bigger plans for this. I've been able to pivot based on those pivots. I think that argument really starts to have some legs. So good luck. Yeah, thanks.
If I may, just on that piece, so the circumstances that we base the practical difficulty on need to be unique to this site. And I just don't want to communicate that if the policy changed while you were looking at the project, that itself could be a practical difficulty, because that's not unique to this site. That actually affected the entire city when we adopted the 2040 plan. So, certainly part of the narrative or discussion, but just from a staff perspective, wanted to flag that.
Good point.
Commissioner Olson.
Thank you. I agree with what the commissioners have already said, and thank you for your work in the community. I think all of us up here believe that it's really important. I like this building that you're showing us. I think that feature on the corner is really cool. And I can see the importance of access to transit and sort of the culturally and geographically sensitive nature of where you're siting your projects. Right now, I agree with Commissioner Campbell. I don't know if I'm seeing the findings there. If staff can make the findings, I would love to vote yes on this project. So, yeah, thanks.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you so much. President, right, Meyer? I have no problem granting you the variance. I completely understand the idea of clinic mixed use. That's not going to work. I also have worked intimately in this neighborhood and know that, as you said, the corridor and the financing for a lot of nonprofits. I agree with you as well that you're not going to get a lot of 6+ stories out of existing things there. And I think that that's something we need to be sensitive to in this panel and just in this city in general, is that best laid plans sometimes, practically speaking, we might be rooting people out of their neighborhoods in a sort of different, sort of, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Displacement, right? Because as everything builds up around, right, then centers that have been around for a very long time, financially and just with volume, can't meet that requirement. I also, just on the medical side, this is not a problem for me. I did have one random question. Forgive me, doctor, I forgot your name when you said it, because when you said HCMC, my father was a family physician at HCMC, and I'm like, I'm going to go home and ask my dad. If you know. Sorry, what was your name?
It's Patrick Rock, R-O-C-K.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate both of you being here.
Thank you.
Commissioner Conley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am thrilled for this project. I think it's great, and I want to thank you for everything that you're doing in this neighborhood and in this community. And I think it says a lot. I wanted to get to a yes on a few things that I have that I've been thinking about would just repeat Commissioner Baxley and Campbell. So I especially about that first one. I think there's something to be said though that your unique space along this corridor and this community, the largest urban native population in the state of Minnesota, is very critical. Like I know Indigenous relatives will come from miles to come to your clinic. I know that. And I've also never been in a clinic that was 6 stories tall. personally as a human being, like the clinic down the street from my house, my primary, it's like 2 stories. It's just this little thing because you can get to the lab, you can get to the pharmacy, you can see your doctor, and you don't have to go through a maze. So there's something unique about that, and I wanted to call that out. And I do think that you're meeting a ton of goals that the city set in the 2040. So I'm looking at page 5, eliminating disparities, of course. Access to healthcare, where many of the population that you'll be serving are on transit lines anyway, are going to need to be in a transit corridor like that. Healthy people, history, culture, clean environment, all of the things. Like, this is a project that would be like a great one for us to go ahead and move forward. So I wanted to move forward. One of the first things that I thought about was adding housing. Of course, why wouldn't we, right? We want more housing, and we certainly need it. But I think you make the case for the very intimate nature of some of the cultural healing practices within the indigenous community, like being on site there, and how that could be disrupted. So I've been sold, but I do have questions around how we can get to a yes so that the technical pieces don't bog us down, because this is too much of an asset. One of the things that I will mention is that the former location of the Navigation Center is what it was called several years ago, which is not too far from here, is now a clinic and housing. I think Red Lake owns this space. I don't recall the name. If anyone knows the name of it, just shout it out, because practical difficulty was on the tip of my tongue and I couldn't think of that either. So it's a clinic, and then there's like maybe it looks like 5 stories maybe of housing on top. So they were able to make that happen, pull that off. Again, though, I can see the support for and against, right? So I'm hoping that there's more work to be done. We can get this to a yes, get it approved, and get the ground broken and get it built. So I wanted to thank you and just highlight some of the support that I see, and also echoing just a little bit of the think about this a little bit more pieces. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Conley. For my part, I would be pretty reluctant to support the variances. I like the project, especially the street-facing part. I think that looks really unique. But I'm hesitant to support variances that would have major implications for other parts of the city. So, like I said at the top, we rejected a previous application that sought a variance on University Avenue, and if we grant variances in such a way that it would apply to a lot of other places, then that would really undermine the new policy that we've implemented. And the reason that we have that policy is because we're investing tremendous resources into public transit, and we want to make sure that those places close to public transit, and this is close to the Franklin Avenue Station and other bus lines, and more coming, we want to make sure that we're putting those spaces to good use. So I'd really need to scrutinize any potential variances for the implications that they would have elsewhere. So I would be reluctant to support a variance based on when the property was purchased, because, as Kimberly was saying, that would apply to all the places that had their zoning changed. I would be reluctant on the argument that it's on the border of the zoning area, because Transit 20 doesn't apply very many places. It's a very small footprint where that applies, and if we were to start not applying to the rule to the boundary, there wouldn't be many places left where we were applying the rule at all. I think maybe one route, like if it's really the case that medical facilities aren't suited for mixed use, which I'd want to hear more about that. I'm not persuaded on that yet, but if that's really the case, and if that's something that others would recommend as well, then I think maybe one route would be to make a policy change to exempt medical facilities from this requirement. That would be a way to that this project could be approved without having, without undermining the policy overall. But I'd be pretty hesitant on any variances that would basically really undermine the policy. And if we did go down that route, then I would almost want to invite back the previous applicant from the University Avenue and say, like, I think we would need a bigger policy change if we went down that route. Kimberly, did you have comments on that?
So while we have you all here to avoid potentially bringing you all back here for a different question, so I've heard, general support, but, in the staff memo and as you've heard here, staff has not been able to find, just in the preliminary discussions we've had, any unique circumstances that constitute a practical difficulty here. It's a relatively flat site, it's a vacant site. Certainly the applicant could do some exploring about soil conditions or things like that to see if there's anything. But this is Transit 20, which is, very narrowly applied. It got a Transit 20 designation because of its proximity to the LRT station. That generally followed the previous, what we called transit station area PO districts, which were quarter-mile spacing boundaries from transit stations. 21st is the edge of the Transit 20, and then it transitions down to Corridor 6 across the street to the east. We talked about whether or not a comp plan amendment is a better tool here. There are other categories between Transit 20 and Corridor 6. We have our Transit 15 district, which is also, calling for really high density development. The minimum height there is 4 stories. We also have a Transit 10 district with a minimum height of 2 stories. So we don't normally do these on the fly, but to avoid bringing the applicant back for that discussion, I guess, how does the commission feel about potentially a comp plan amendment? And again, the analysis is going to, from a staff perspective, really rely on the algorithm we used about proximity to transit. So we haven't done that deep dive yet. I don't know where we would land, but again, there's some room between Transit 20 and Corridor 6. I just wanted to throw that out for discussion while you're here.
I think I would start off by saying I would be receptive to a comp plan amendment. Commissioner Campbell, and then Olson, and then Wagner. Conley.
So Kimberly, in that, I also am supportive of that in concept. How do you defend that change to this specific project for other people in other parts of the city with less of a compelling need and or case that want similar treatment, to Commissioner Meyer's earlier point?
Yes, great question. So like I said, we haven't done the full deep dive there, but one of the things that we do with that analysis, if you've seen in the comp plan amendment reports in the past, is what policies is this meeting? And is it still going to allow for the type of high-intensity development that we want this close to a transit station if we were to change it from Transit 20 to Transit 15? I think that argument could be made. It's different if you're going all the way down to Corridor 6. But if we're staying in that, Transit 10, Transit 15 area, so we're still acknowledging what, great access to transit this site has, we'd have to call out specific policies and make sure that we're really narrowly looking at it that way. Because, the further you chip away at that quarter-mile spacing, then the more potential there is for others to follow suit. But this would be one parcel.
Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'd support a Transit 10 or Transit 15. And that I do think that there are a number of policies that in our comprehensive plan that would be unique to this and would help me support it.
Did you still want to speak, Commissioner Wagner? No? Okay. Commissioner Conley?
I can't think of anything different to say other than that, yeah. Whatever would get this across the finish line or get it to a yes to clear up the issue with the first variance, I think, is something that I would absolutely stand behind. I do have a question, though. So, like, the fact that this, like, meets a number of stated goals already in the plan, like, it's a culturally specific clinic in a culturally designated area that was created by the city. So there's not very many cultural districts, right? There's like 5, 7 maybe throughout the city. So the fact that this is on just one of those spaces in this really big city, meeting multiple stated policy goals, like, is that the amendment? Or could that make the argument to amend the comp plan?
I think that would certainly be part of it. So I'm trying to think all the way back. Cultural districts were like a known element of the comp plan, but their exact location had not been identified yet when we adopted the built form overlay districts. So, part of the analysis too is, has something changed? Or since we looked at this, we've seen that with like Blue Line, LRT. So I do think, yes, that would certainly be something that would be reflected in the staff report if they decided to pursue that option.
Commissioner Jones.
I guess I want to echo what others said in making sure that we move this across the finish line in the most efficient way possible. And I also, and I appreciate the comp plan and the importance of the transit district, but I also echo Becca's, Commissioner Thompson's point, which is, we really need to be looking at if these are, especially if they're cultural corridors and there's lots of nonprofits that need to work in them, and we restrict them by unintended consequences when we put the transit corridor there, when we put the 6-story limit. I just think that those are things that's why we're here to discuss these, right? That we do need to have some specifics, but we also have to recognize in the real world, things change, and there's also really important considerations that we need to factor in. I'm also curious, I wasn't here for the University Avenue variance, and I would like to, if I could take 30 seconds to hear more about that, or I can go offline and ask Kimberly, because right, I appreciate the fact about consistency, but I also think that sometimes these aren't really apples to apples, so that's my,
Kimberly.
thank you.
I was on maternity leave when that came forward,
right.
so
Sorry.
we can take that offline, though. Hillary was filling in for me, but I think that was just another area where an applicant was proposing a building that didn't meet the minimum height and did not have a good case for a practical difficulty to support that. We do know of other projects that applicants are currently working with staff on that have similar requests to reduce minimum height or minimum FAR that we have not been supportive of in those preliminary discussions either. From a consistency sake, we have our adopted policy and we're sticking with that. But a comp plan amendment is an opportunity for us to take a look at the policy and to determine whether or not circumstances have changed or if there are other things that we should have taken into consideration that would maybe move the dial on the built form.
Commissioner Baxley.
Thank you, Hillary. I would be supportive of a comp plan amendment, but it's interesting, is this issue about density, or is it built form, or both? Because we're meeting a minimum FAR, which to me talks about density. If I were to build that out with housing, with whatever, check the box. So is this about a built form issue or a density issue, and how does the city think about those? I think that's worth discussing.
Good question. I mean, I would say it's both, especially with the way we adopted the built form overlay districts. But, we're certainly having internal conversations about that too.
Yeah, one becomes a little bit more aesthetic versus the issues of density next to transit. That's interesting to poke at that a little bit, so, thanks.
Are there any other comments or questions?
Could I just ask this? I'm just trying.
Can you speak out of the microphone, please?
Oh, sorry. Just trying to think of the site challenges issue. And what if we say it's not really a negative thing, but the site challenge is the American Indian Corridor is only in one place. and Dr. Rock wanted a clinic on the corridor near a public transit hub, and there's only so many sites, and he bought this in 2015. If we could find another site that wasn't in the 6-story corridor, but on the American Indian corridor, is that a site challenge? Because how many sites are there that are available to build a clinic for him to buy? Because he doesn't want to build this anywhere else. It has to be on Franklin, and it has to be on the American Indian corridor. To me, that's a site challenge. That's like, when we build on the reservation, there's only so much reservation land that we can build on, right? But here, we've got an urban reservation, there's only so much land that we can build on. That's a site challenge to me. And he was forward thinking and bought this land in 2015 saying, I'm gonna build the eastern anchor of the American Indian Corridor, a clinic. There's nowhere else. And it's near, and what he wants is people from St. Paul that he serves to ride the green line to the blue line to come to his clinic. He wants other people from other urban areas to come to his clinic by using the tram, the train. So I think that might be a way forward too, as far as a site challenge, because there isn't any other sites. That's our challenge. If we could find more sites, maybe we could build it somewhere else, but there isn't. It's only a mile-long piece of road with north and south sides, 1 block.
I think for me, I would not be receptive to it because I think the majority of the corridor would still allow your project. It's only the Transit 20 on the eastern edge that wouldn't. I think.
Well, but
if
the
we showed,
whole,
like,
the
if we
whole
showed it-
corridor is covered by this overlay, correct, or not?
No.
Pete, it's the blue. Yeah, this entire thing, the entire American Indian corridor is in the blue zone. The whole thing. So there's the Minneapolis American Indian Center. There's, FNAC, where they are now. Oh, the whole thing is covered by this 6-story corridor, the blue zone, running right to left on your page through the center.
So I think that could also be something to be taken into consideration with the comp plan amendment. And I don't know if you've had those, we can have the more detailed conversation about what that timeline looks like and what the
We're just having the
requirements look like.
conversation, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't
Not
have-
be a cliche, but just thinking a little bit outside the box for,
Yeah.
a land issue. That's what we're having. It's not, we can't build a 6-story because our footings can't be built there. It's, we can't build anywhere else because that's where it belongs. So.
I might be mistaken about how far the corridor extends to the west. So I guess that'd be something for staff if they could show us that.
If you want, I could send you the entire American Indian Corridor Cultural Master Plan that was done by NACD. That establishes that whole plan for a future vision of the American Indian Corridor, and it's 10 blocks to the east of, or to the west of this eastern anchor. So it's almost a mile long.
Because I don't know. I would want to hear from staff what they want to say about that. Any other questions or comments about it? All right, I think my preferred route would still be a comp plan amendment for me. Any further discussion or any closing comments from the applicant?
Just thank you for hearing us, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our business for the day, so I will declare our meeting adjourned. Our next meeting is May 6th of 2024. There's no committee of the whole this week. Are there any other updates from staff or from commissioners?
No, thank you. And thank you for being flexible about having this kind of quasi-committee of the whole discussion in our regular meeting tonight. I hope this went well.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, it's cool. Well, I actually missed